Welcome. Today's video is going to cover a new BFS rod. It's the Phenix Classic BFS. It's a 7'1" bass focus rod. So if you want to see information on this, keep watching. Also comment down below what BFS rods you're using. All right, so to start off with, some things that I noticed right off the bat with the rod is that it has a smaller trigger. This is probably the most exciting thing for me because I don't like having long triggers on my rods, even on my like heavy powered like jig rods or anything like that. So that smaller trigger is nice. And the reel seat's pretty comfortable. I haven't fished with it yet, but holding the rod, it does feel really nice. Kind of going into that, this is the Shimano SLX BFS. It's pretty much like the Corrado BFS, except for it's less money and it's from Japan. I got this from Digitaka, I don't know, like pretty much right when it was released, and I haven't found any real noticeable differences between the SLX and the Corrado. And the SLX also comes in a lower gear ratio if you want as well. Getting back into the rod, it's a 7'1" rod, like I said. It's 4 to 10 pound line rating, and it's 3/32 of an ounce up to a 1/4 ounce. So that's pretty wide range for most of your finesse bass baits that you're going to be using. I plan on using this rod a lot for walleye as well. A lot of those finesse like jerk baits or finesse swim baits and such. This rod would do really good for that, I think. The quality of the cork, I think the cork's pretty decent for a $200 rod, or right in that ballpark. It does have some composite cork on the ends for a little bit more durability. If you can see that little bit darker cork there. And it has a rubberized butt cap on there as well. It's 15 micro guides going all the way up. They're not tiny micro guides, but I think if you're using like a 15-pound braid with like, I don't know, 8 to 10 pound leader, you might have some issues with knots, but I will test that in the future. Some other things too is that the rod overall, I think it looks really nice, especially for its price point. A lot of people are going to be asking, comparing it to the Dobbins like 700 series, for example, like the Dobbins Sierra series. I'll get into the taper a little bit, but I think cosmetically this rod looks really nice, especially with this skeleton reel nut here. More important than what it looks like, I'm going to get into how it fishes. I'm going to throw, this is a Rapala X Wrap. This weighs at a 1/4 ounce, so this is going to be, at least for me, a lot of what I use for walleye. We'll use it for finesse bass fishing as well. But this is right near the upper end of the rod's limit. Turn my brakes down for sure. Now, for me, like there's a lot of fun things about using like BFS gear instead of spinning gear. But some of the functional side of it, other than precision with like finesse plastics and such, is when you're working jerk baits in top waters or anything that you have to use your rod tip to move. It can be a little awkward to do with a spinning reel because you had that line coming out and controlling the line's a little bit harder. But like here I could use 7-pound fluorocarbon, which if you were twitching lures with a spinning reel with 7-pound fluorocarbon, that'd be a little difficult to manage your line. I don't know what this water temp is, but it's got to be pretty cold just being ice out. But it's a fairly shallow, there we go, I got one. Fairly shallow lake. This is weird because I think this is the first fish I ever caught filming here. It's not a big one, but I'll take it. Full of spunk. There it is. I'm actually glad that I got unhooked easy because I didn't bring pliers. I was actually quite a bit of bend with that fish. I'm not saying I'm worried, because that Dobbins Sierra did the same thing. I remember catching a few small fish at first, and I was a little worried that I won't be able to handle bigger fish, which it does. It's not the best rod for like bigger fish, but it does handle them. And it kept I didn't really have it hooked all that good either, but it kept the hooks pinned, which is another good thing of having more of that give. So it's like a fast action rod, and then it gives pretty quickly into most of the way through the backbone. So you can keep those smaller hooks pinned. I mean, it was just one fish, but I guess I'll get into the taper right now. So comparing it to the Dobbins Sierra series, this isn't a full comparison video. I'm not putting one rod versus another, but the tapers are fairly similar, I'd say. I mean, just in hand. I mean, I could get some rod data, you know, in a more complete video or whatever, but I feel they're pretty similar. And I did weigh the rods. This rod weighs just over 3 ounces, and the Dobyns Sierra series, the 700C, that one weighs, I think it was like 3.48 ounces or so. So it's a little bit less than a ½ ounce lighter weight than that rod, but in hand you don't really feel a huge difference. I feel a little bit, but I think I'd have to fish them side by side to really tell. And this rod does have a solid tip as well, just like the Dobyns, the 700C. So the solid tip is a little bit harder to tell. Yeah, you can't even, it's right here. So from here to here, that's solid tip. And something that I noticed with this rod, so sometimes like your solid tip, say drop shot rods, for example, like your spinning rods, they could be a really fast action. So this whole tubular part would be fairly stiff, and then the tip will just bend. And what that does when you're setting the hook or fighting a fish or whatever, it's a lot of force on that joint, and it could break easy. But this rod, it seems like it has enough give up in that tubular section. I don't know if the camera can really pick that up. With that, it's going to protect that joint, so you're not going to get as much force directed right to that joint. It's going to be more spread out. Especially having more guides like that, it's going to give your line more contact points with your blank to more evenly distribute that force. And so far, casting and working this jerkbait, I'll even try to like work on a little bit slack line. Just kidding. Got a nice fish. I was trying to see like how the line lay and everything. This one's bigger than the last one. Try to step down here just to get the taper of the rod a little bit more. Well, it is a bigger fish, not huge. Oh, that's a spunky one. Every time I see a bass around this size, I always hope it's a crappie. Especially like when it's springtime and they're a little bit lighter colored. That's a big bellied bass. I mean, that's just after ISO. Yeah, there's a little bit of a protrusion there, so that's from food. That's not even from eggs yet. And I do have a question. You see how this one has a really red lips up there in the crush plate? Why do you think the bass have those red spots on the crush plates? A lot of times people say it's from, you know, crushing crawdads or whatever it is. I forget what else, it's just like a seasonal thing. I always wondered why that is. All right, so like I said, this is more of my initial testing, just casting some lures, getting a feel for how the rod is. I'll be giving some more complete information through like Instagram posts. Also, I'll be using this rod in future videos as well. And then to kind of capstone it, I'll do a Tackle Tour article on it, just my more complete thoughts that way. But I think just initially, right off the bat for me using this, that for I think it was like $20 extra or so for this rod versus the Dobyns, just for my limited uses so far, I'd take this rod over that. The tapers are pretty similar. Sensitivity wise, I didn't get a huge test on this for sensitivity, but it felt right in the same ballpark as that Dobyns, just my limited uses so far. Rod's lighter, it just overall looks better, but the reel seat I think is a big thing, at least for me. You know, if you like a bigger trigger, maybe that Dobyns is going to be for you. But if you want to see some more information on just BFS fishing in general, especially I got some BFS trout content that's going to be coming out pretty soon, make sure you subscribe and also comment down below what future content that you'd like to see.